Hey guys, this is Lauren and Megan, and we want to welcome you to Rhythms, a podcast by Bright Lights Theater.
Rhythms exist to equip parents and encourage actors while integrating theater and theology.
We are so thankful you've tuned into our show and hope you find encouraging and accessible information about what it's like to live in the space where theater and theology intersect.
Yeah, now let's dive in.
We are so excited to have Dr. Jerry Lawrence here today, who has been so impactful in my life here at DTS. She teaches all the children's ministry classes, and she's just a wonderful role model in life and in ministry. So Dr. Lawrence is here today. Welcome, Dr. Lawrence.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm glad that you invited me.
Of course. Thank you for being here. So would you mind telling us a little about yourself?
Sure. I grew up in a large family with parents who modeled what it was like to know and love the Lord, not just on Sundays, but in everyday life. And so I became a Christian at an early age. Okay. I went to college. Out of college, I worked in the business world with my degree. But after a few years of that, I felt called to study at Dallas Theological Seminary. And while I was a student, I became involved in a church plant. And they asked me to be the children's director there. And I did that for about 6 years.
Okay.
And so then after that, I love learning. So I kept going. I was studying for my Doctor of Ministry and began teaching at the same time and have been doing so for 17 years now.
That's amazing.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride.
That is so cool.
That's so awesome. Church planting I just think it takes a special kind of person, so that's really sweet. I'm just curious, how many kids did you start with?
We started with 2 toddlers.
Okay.
Maybe a baby. I think there was one lady that was pregnant, and then we had about 4 elementary age kids.
Amazing.
And so over the 6 years, it grew to maybe about 150 or so kids.
Were you writing curriculum yourself?
No, I wasn't writing curriculum, but I was organizing everything.
Yeah.
We had all the teachers, and we threw a baby shower so we could have all the toys and the supplies and everything we needed for it. So we just kind of did fun things like that, and it was small enough to where we knew everybody. It was fun.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So, Megan has told me that one of your passions is creativity.
Yes.
So I'm just curious, why are you passionate about creativity, and especially in children? How is that grown in you?
Sure. One of the first courses I taught here at Dallas Seminary was with Dr. Howard Hendricks. He's a legend at DTS. He taught here for 60 years. And so I was fortunate to teach with him for his last 8 years of teaching. Wow. And so the course we taught together was creativity. It was my favorite course when I took it from him as a student, but then I love to teach it as well. It's one of my favorite courses to teach. Okay. I think one reason why I love it so much is that creativity allows us the opportunity to play and express ourselves honestly, much like we did when we were children. Yeah. Children have such a natural ability to be curious and to think with their imagination. They are just abandoned when they play, and they don't have any thought of what other people think of themselves. Yeah. They don't have those negative filters that pile up on us as we go through life and become adults.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
That's true. So I guess a good question would be, what is your definition of creativity? What does that mean for you?
So I think everybody has their own definition, and when you're talking about a subject, it's good to come up with a definition. And so I came up with one of my own a few years ago, and for me, creativity is daring and dreaming and doing. And I'll explain those 3. Okay. Daring to believe I can do anything I set my mind to. Dreaming up new ideas, looking at something differently, and crafting those ideas into something never seen before. And then the last part, which I think is so important, is doing. Doing what I have imagined in my mind. It's releasing myself to do and be what God intended me to do and be.
That's good.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good. It's amazing to, it's one thing to think up those things so that it's another to actually implement them and put
Right.
them out for the world,
Right.
which is a
Mhm.
huge part of the daring part of that, or
Right.
like talking about kids and them having reckless abandon,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
just being
Mhm.
willing to put yourself out there
Right.
to get those to
Right.
get your creative thoughts
Right.
out. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so great.
And it becomes a lifestyle.
Yeah.
It should become a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
It's both an action that we perform, but also an attitude.
Mm.
An attitude of creativity in our lives.
Oh, I love that.
I
Yeah.
love that.
That can be kind of not just in one particular facet, but
Right.
in all things.
In all areas.
Huh.
Yeah.
I love
Very
that.
cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm creative in this type of way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or I'm creative in, art or graphic design or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But you can bring creativity to every area of your life.
Right.
So,
That's
Right. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So, what does Scripture say about creativity?
sure.
But we're at seminary, we got it.
Right, we have to
Gotta
bring in
know
the
the scripture.
scripture. We do, and
We have to.
we have to have a biblical basis for everything we do, right?
so true.
So when we talk about creativity, we have to go back to the very first verse of the Bible.
Okay.
Genesis 1:1 says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth."
Yeah, I did.
So God is our creator. Creation is right in the first verse. And because of that, he created us in his image. We all have a spark of creativity within us. And there are people that say, oh, I'm not creative. But I would say we're all creative because we're made in his image, and we just need to nurture and develop that creativity.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's something that we've talked
Yeah.
about. Just wanting to cultivate that in our kids
Right.
because we know that it's there.
Right.
Like, and how sweet it is to just to be able to image and reflect our creator
Right.
to even to an audience that might
Right.
not be thinking that way when they walk into a
Right.
show or to a showcase.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And it's so great to see when people don't think they're creative, to see that switch turn on and go, oh, I am. I can do this. I can think up new ideas and do things differently and imagine things that I never thought of before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Such a sweet moment.
What are some of the benefits of being creative as children walk into adulthood?
Sure. One of the big benefits of developing creativity when children are young is that they look at the world differently. Instead of seeing barriers and problems, they see possibilities and opportunities. They just don't think in those negative ways. Being able to think independently instead of groupthink is so important for children as they go out into the world. Employers are looking for people who can problem solve and come up with ideas and solutions.
Yeah.
And ministry teams also need that same type of creative thinking.
Yeah,
That's great.
that's awesome.
Because even if they're not going to be in a creative field per
Right.
se, they still need those problem-solving
Right.
skills.
So
Right.
life,
to do.
life skills.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. So, how would you encourage a new parent to cultivate that creativity in their kid, whether they see it or not, maybe?
Right. I think it's so important for parents to affirm their natural gifts and abilities. One of my nieces, from the time she first held a crayon in her hand, those big fat crayons that toddlers use, she was drawing animals
Wow.
as a 2-year-old.
Impressive. I still can't do that.
It's amazing. I mean, she had this natural artistic ability. Coloring books did not interest her at all.
That's funny.
And my sister, who is also creative, she saw that and knew, I don't need to force her to color in a coloring book. So she just supplied her with paper and canvases, art supplies. They would go to the art store and pick out whatever, she would use to make her own creations. One thing I remember she did, I don't know what age, but she made this life-size, her size alligator out of newspaper, wrapped it with masking tape. What I mean, in her own, she thinks of this in her own mind. Nobody told her to do that.
It's amazing.
She watched Animal Planet, all growing up, and studied all the animals and could tell you all facts about them, but also draw them in great detail. It's really amazing. So she is actually now in college getting her art degree
Oh, wow.
on a scholarship. So
That is
it's
so
kind of neat how just nurturing that when they're young
Yeah.
gives them a life path.
Yeah. Those are the kids that we need help building sets.
Right.
Come build an alligator.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yes. Yeah.
That's so fun.
That's awesome. So, on that note, in what ways did maybe your parents cultivate those skills in you?
Right, they did. One thing I realize now, what they did at Christmas, when we were growing up, at least one of the gifts our parents gave each of us was something that we could do or make with our own hands.
I love it.
I remember a cross-stitch kit and quilting lessons when I was 13.
Wow.
One year, they gave us 4 girls a sewing machine, and we were just over the moon. We were like, oh, yay, what kinds of things we can make with this, you know?
So fun.
So that was fun. And then also, I think, too, creativity comes out in different ways. Music was a big part of our life.
Mm-hmm.
Piano when we were young. My twin sister is a wonderful pianist, and she just, picked up the piano at like age 5.
Oh, wow.
And and so, but in the older years, we several of us were in band, and then also my nieces and nephews, several of them have played instruments, and we've had at Christmas, we have a Christmas play, and we have had an orchestra as part of the play.
Just within your family?
Within our family, about eight people playing instruments.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And one of my nephews is a band director now, so he I know it worked out perfect. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm curious. What are the instruments involved?
Okay, so we had a couple of guitars, a violin, trumpet, clarinet, saxophone, maybe flute. Did I say flute?
No.
Yeah. So I mean,
like a
full variety.
Orchestra.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love
pretty
that.
Funny. Yeah.
That is so fun. Well, what are some ways, I guess, a parent can best model creativity for their child?
I think one of the best ways to model creativity is just to never stop learning. To have hobbies and interests that allow for creativity to happen. And it can be gardening or cooking or any kinds of things like that, but just to always have an interest in learning something new. As parents model that creativity to their children, maybe they can find something that they like doing together.
Yes.
I have some friends that have just brought their kids into the kitchen with them, and hey, let's make a recipe together, and let's learn how to cook or bake. And these kids are becoming, I'll see their post on Facebook, and they'll have a picture of, here's the something pie that they made. I'm like, I can't make a pie. How is this 8-year-old making a pie?
That's so fun.
It's so much fun. And they're like, and the bonus is the parents don't have to cook.
There you go.
I'm like, they have
You want to make dinner?
Yeah.
Great.
You make
go
dinner.
Make dinner.
Yeah. So
That's sweet. And those are memories that those kids are going to have forever. Some of my most vivid Christmas memories from when I was younger was making Christmas cookies with my Nana and sitting up on the counter and decorating the cookies. And it's super, super sweet time just to connect even.
Yeah. And that's that idea of bringing creativity into every aspect of our lives.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so awesome. Sweet.
So,
is there a time in life when creativity tends to stop for people, like when there may be a shift in their thinking as far as how they're connecting with their kids?
Right. So, yes, and I would say, sadly, their children are so creative when they're young, but many times when they start school is when they tend to lose that creativity. It starts to fade away.
Interesting.
They begin sitting in rows.
Sure.
And having to follow rules and do things the way somebody else says to do them. And I'm not saying don't obey the rules, but those things can stifle creativity if we're not careful.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. Wow, that's true. Do you think there are ways that our culture today has shaped or stumped the creativity of the children and adults? Kind of going off that
Right.
school
Yeah.
comment.
I think there are so many negative voices in our world, and sometimes in our own heads, that we can stifle that creativity.
Okay.
When trying to solve a problem, we hear people say, "Oh, that won't work," or "We don't need to change that," or "We've always done it that way."
Right.
Yeah.
It's like this, and it's almost like you hear that in your own head, even when you hear people saying it. You're like, "Oh, right, we shouldn't try to do something different or new."
Right.
Let's just play it safe.
Yes.
That's true.
And it's very rare that the initial comments that people will make about change is positive. Yeah.
Change is scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's what's for the best,
right?
It's like, oh, well, here's a new idea. Oh, well, that's not the right way to do it. Well, but maybe it's the better way.
Right.
Like, we don't know if we don't try it.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And sometimes there are more than one right way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yes. That's so good. Yep, it's me, right?
Yeah.
What are some tangible ways that we can express creativity today with a little prep, maybe?
Yeah. And it can happen in just the ordinary parts of our everyday life. I don't think it takes a lot of prep. You could just take young kids, just take them on a walk and explore the world. Stop where they stop. Let them be the lead, the guide. Walk through the puddles with them. Pick up the sticks and the stones and the bugs. Look at the bugs. Smell the flowers.
Yeah.
Go on a picnic and lie back and watch the clouds. That's one of my favorite activities, to see what shapes they are and talk to kids or look at the stars. One time we had a barbecue and one of my nephews we were just looking and going, okay, what about that star? And, just like looking at the world that God made. And enjoying it. He created the world for us to enjoy. And we can speak about God's creativity to our kids and how he made the world and created it for us to enjoy.
Yeah, that's good. It's really easy in Dallas with the pace of life in Dallas to just rush through it. Oh, we're going to go for a walk, but it's going to be a brisk walk because we've got like 15 minutes.
Right.
So not being afraid of interruption,
right,
or a slower Saturday maybe, taking time to allow your kids to experience those things. Is really sweet.
I have a picture of some of my nieces and nephews are now married, and so I have some great nieces and nephews, and one of the best pictures of one of them is in his raincoat, little 3-year-old with his fun umbrella. Out in the rain, he's soaking wet with his rain boots, everything. He's just having the best time. It's like you think, oh, it's a nice sunny day. Let's go out and play. Well, it's just as fun for kids to play in the rain.
So it's like a above ground pool.
Right.
I know. This is so much fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Very cool. Well, what are some of the tools that parents shouldn't go without concerning creativity? What would you kind of recommend?
I'd like to see every home have a creativity center. It can just be a corner of the dining room or any area of the house, but supply it with paper, crayons, markers, paint, and then fun things like sequins and feathers and glitter. That may be a little too girly for the boys, but you could also have like a woodworking shop where you have scraps of wood and
my husband would love that.
Yeah. And have, a hammer and nails and paint. Just let them make whatever. And I think at some point every child should have a refrigerator box.
Interesting. Explain.
Yes. Okay. So what would you do as an adult, what would you do with a refrigerator box?
I would do lots of things with a refrigerator box.
Right.
Yes.
Like a box that
like a big box that the refrigerator came in.
Come in. Oh my goodness. My parents would always joke that they would get us all these nice expensive toys, but we wouldn't touch the toys. We would just be in the box for hours and hours.
Yes. And it can become all kinds of things.
Anything.
For kids, it's just like whatever.
Yeah.
It can
so
be
fun.
a train, a car,
a boat, a fort,
yes,
whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah. We had a mailbox, a box that we turned into a mailbox that we used as a Halloween costume several years in a row. Everyone would say, "I want to be the mailbox this year."
That's so funny.
Amazing.
I don't know where we got it, but it was just like, "Oh, I'm the mailbox this year."
I love
It had little where you put the letters in. That was where you got to keep your candy. You know, like you put the candy in the.
So fun.
So funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing.
Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about creativity. I know next time that we talk, we're going to be talking about parenting, which is, I know, something that you're passionate about. But thank you so much for coming on to talk about creativity.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. We hope it was so helpful to everyone listening. It was definitely, helpful for us even as we think about having your kids in our care. And we're really excited to start to see these things in them and cultivate these things. So we're pumped. Thanks for tuning in today. We hope you feel equipped and encouraged by this episode of Rhythms. As always, if you could leave a review, we would be so grateful to hear from you.
If you have any questions about what we discussed or have a recommendation of something you'd love to hear, you can reach us at info@brightlightstheater.org.
For more information, you can check us out on Instagram and Facebook or go to our website at brightlightstheater.org.
Bright Lights Theater exists to train the next generation as masterful storytellers in order to bring the light of Christ to a dark and broken industry. We are a nonprofit, so if you feel led to give financially, you can do so on our website.
Catch you later.